Back to the Voices of Reason show. I'm your host, and today we're in the building with a very special person. And I would like you to introduce yourself right now, if you don't mind. How you doing?
I'm Stuart Chittenden, and it's a pleasure to meet you, and very kind of you to call me a very special person. Thank you.
Yeah. Why not?
I'm sure there are many reasons, it depends who you ask, but thank you for that gracious introduction.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you. We're glad that you came here today. You know, you came to our show to talk a little bit about conversation and all of the things that can go with it.
Yes.
Yeah. So why don't you give us a little background? I've seen your TED Talk and I loved it. So the first thing I wanted to ask, wanted to ask, what was the journey like leading up? Because I know it's a lot before you actually get on the stage.
Oh.
So would you like to share a little bit of that with us?
I will, and not least because I don't know when you will broadcast this show, but TEDx Lincoln, this year's version, is coming up fairly soon, September 14th, so it's fairly timely that you're asking me this question.
Right.
So I was on TEDx Lincoln last year, and the journey up to that was maybe 6 to 8 months in the making. They put out a call for entries and they asked, do you have an idea that is worth sharing? And I felt like I did, and it was about this subject of conversation. So I pitched that, and they have a pretty rigorous selection process. It felt that way to me. I always felt very nervous at each stage. So the first stage was just making it through the application process.
Right.
Then you were invited to submit a very casual, maybe even a phone recorded 3-minute video of yourself talking about your idea in general terms.
Right.
If that makes the cut, you then get interviewed, and then you find out whether you've been selected. So that was fairly rigorous for me, just to get through that selection process.
It is a lot.
So daunting as that was, then getting selected, you realize how terrifying it really is, because then you're building up to this moment when you're going to stand on that famous red circle carpet and present to an audience of however many it is, 300 to 500 people, plus the online audience too.
Yeah, definitely.
But to their credit, and I found this to be true of TEDx Lincoln in my experience, and also TEDx Omaha too, they put a huge amount of effort into making sure that you as the speaker are as well equipped as possible to give the best presentation you've ever given in your life.
Right.
And this next 4 to 5 months is all about getting you ready to write your presentation, your speech, to finesse it, to correct it. You have a voice, not a voice coach, but a presentation speech coach, and they work with you on the story too. And it gets hard because you think you have the story, and then once you start to present it, you realize it's not compelling in the right way. So you have to sometimes cut things or change things. And that sometimes feels like you're cutting a little piece of yourself.
Yeah, that's like your baby.
But nonetheless, they are constantly helping you to this place where you end up with a presentation that you feel is a 10 to 18 minute presentation that is the best expression of that idea that you have.
Right.
And so the journey itself was tough, but I guess like all journeys worth taking, it was substantially, exponentially better by the time I walked out on that stage than the first time I presented it as an idea to the group at the beginning.
Right. That's where the value is too, like remembering the journey. Because it's like before you do anything, it's like, okay, can I, will I, how will it go? Like once you take it all the way to the end, like I feel like you learn so much. Like no matter the end product, like you learn so much about yourself that like you're always better after that.
Right.
I definitely believe that. So what exactly was your idea?
The essence of it is that we can awaken the humanity within ourselves and with other people through authentic conversation.
Right.
Which I think makes you and I kindred spirits in this particular engagement that we have now and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. What led you to that though? Like you just woke up one day and...
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was more incremental than just the epiphany of waking up thinking, aha, conversation is the answer. But the truth is, as a species, ever since we lifted our knuckles from the ground, we've been a conversant species.
Definitely.
And speech and listening is very much a part of who we are since the day that we were created. So it's not a new concept, but over the last, I want to say, 8 or 9 years, just in my life, I've come to realize that there seemed to be a dearth or a diminution of genuine conversation between people.
Right.
And I don't think I need to ask people, did you notice we just had an election? Have you noticed that there is great divide amongst many people?
Right.
Everybody's living that experience today. And so we've really just reached this point of an overt manifestation of this lack of dialogue between people.
I agree.
And yeah. So it was this incremental realization over the years that this was a problem.
Right. And that is a very big issue too, because it seems like the more social media becomes like the thing, the less social people get. We say that all the time. And I don't know what, it's like a hypersensitivity or what exactly leads to that. But I feel like if you just have that, old-fashioned conversation, like I listen to you, you listen to me, it's like you grow so much from that.
So interesting that you use that word hypersensitivity. And I want to ask you, what does that mean to you? Because I think you're onto something. I don't think that's the whole answer, but I think that's part of it. And I wonder what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, as far as if I disagree with you, no matter how I disagree with you, I can do it politely. Just the fact that I don't agree, it's like so many people, it's like, go for the jugular. Like instantly, like, I've done the research and you sound like an uneducated, people and I just don't know what, and it seems to be like part of our culture now. Mm-hmm. Like to where there was a time where, we exchanged ideas and you could use a scientific method, you can say, that's not for me, like you can use whatever you want, like bogus science, whatever, and just say that's not for me. But now it's like this thing of, no matter what you have, like, you can say, hey, I used the scientific method to prove this. I had 27 controls. We did 1,000 experiments. This is the answer I got. Oh, that's dumb. That's, it's like, instead of just saying, okay, and I just feel like that's from, I don't know, everyone wants to be heard. No one wants to listen.
Wow. So again, I think you're onto something absolutely essential with that. Everybody wants to be heard and no one is listening.
Right.
And I feel as if technology isn't the enemy.
No, not at all.
But so I'm not anti-technology, but I think I am with you pro-conversation.
Right.
And to some degree, social media has exacerbated this hypersensitivity, where we take slight very easily. I don't think it's easy to communicate with people through remote means. And so you and I can sit here and we can see each other's body language. And if we weren't agreeing on something, we could sense that, and if we're feeling that we're coming together on an idea, we would see that too, and that would be outside of the actual words we're saying.
Right.
But now with the rapidity of communication, and I call it communication, not conversation.
Right.
We're so focused on ourselves in this and our emotional response that we're completely missing out on the connectivity that comes from this authentic engagement in conversation.
Right. I definitely agree. So what are some tips? Would you give some tips to people? Would you feel comfortable doing that?
So that's interesting to ask that too, would I feel comfortable doing that? So I will give some tips, but I think of them more as a way we can think about the attitudes that we bring to the principles and the practice of the art of conversation.
That sounds
but
good.
do I feel comfortable doing it? I'm not sure that I do, because I don't think that I'm a great conversationalist. I certainly don't think of myself as a guru of this.
Right.
Everybody in the world is born with a genetic capacity for language. So it's wired in. So I claim no great insight or sort of divine inspiration or expert knowledge in this, as much as we're wired for this anyway. But what I do see myself as someone who is an advocate for us using this art. And I think that's where perhaps my role comes in. But to answer your question then more directly, we have a whole set of attitudes that we bring to our art of conversation. And they include practices like openness, and curiosity, being willing to embrace chance as it happens,
Right.
Being attentive to our empathic responses to people, using empathy, embracing silence, allowing silence into this space so that the conversation can work out where it wants to go, and it gives us time to think too. And then courage, be brave.
Yeah.
So many people aren't willing to have difficult conversations, even though they're necessary, because they don't know how to disagree without being disagreeable. And courage in the sense of vulnerability. So many people are really ashamed of themselves because we're not a culture that allows people to be themselves, which is human, which is flawed.
Right.
And we're all flawed, but it takes great courage to acknowledge that and then to step forward to someone and say, I'm not perfect, but we can still engage each other.
Right.
So I think those key practices, and there are various ways that we can maybe be attentive, and it will be different for everybody, but I think those things are things we can be really aware of. And so if I was going to give any specific guidance for people, I would just say, ask some questions, be open to someone else, however they want to respond. Don't be too quick to judgment. Be willing to have a different opinion, that's okay. And you don't have to know the answer, that's also okay. And just be willing to step into someone else's shoes and engage people.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It does take a lot of courage because you never know, a person could reject you, or, you know, I know I find myself sometimes where it's like, I have this great thing that I'm going to say, and then when I start to say it, it's like it just gets lost somewhere, and it comes out, and it's like, oh. So it's like after a couple of times that happened, it kind of, you know, it's kind of harder to step out sometimes.
You know, sometimes we say, I think it's a good practice to talk to someone else to make sense of what we are thinking.
Yeah.
It can be hard, this jumble of thoughts, and there's something in here. It's an idea, it's a thought, it's an opinion, not sure what it is, but to make sense of it, it's good just to get it out, and then you and I can sort of sit here and pick it over a little bit. We can talk it through until eventually, talking it out loud to each other, I begin to realize, oh, that's how I feel, or that's what I was thinking, oh, that's the idea, now I've got it.
Right.
But it's a creative endeavor between us.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Okay, I'm gonna change gears a little.
Okay.
Okay, I understand that you have a show, right?
I have a radio show.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Well, tell us a little about it.
So it started in January. It's on Mind and Soul 101.3 FM, which is based in. So you're aware of it.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah, I'm listening.
We were joking beforehand about how we have maybe we always joke about our audience, and it's our mothers that are listening. So I don't know how many people are listening to the show, but Mind and Soul is a new low-power community radio station, and it got the license from the Federal Communications Commission. And low power means that the antenna is shorter, the power is not as strong as a commercial radio. Right. So the radius of its reach on air is about 5-6 miles, depending upon topography of the land, where you are, so on and so forth.
Right.
But of course, this being the 21st century, it also streams on the internet. So anybody on the planet and beyond can listen in. So that's the station. It's focused on community. That's the point of community radio station.
Right.
And my show is a 1-hour show on Wednesday afternoons, and I interview people. It's about community. It's about conversation. It's about people that bring those things to life. And it's been hugely rewarding to have conversations with interesting people, as you know.
Yeah, it is. I love doing it. I love doing it. I love it. So what motivated you to go that route? Because I know Mind and Power, they've been about a year or so. Has it been that long? So
I became involved. I was invited by one of the members of this sort of working committee that had spent years trying to work on this to get this to a place where the FCC would award the license, and all the things that go with setting up a radio station.
Yeah, it has to be daunting.
Oh, absolutely, and they have all the credit, a vast number of people that deserve a lot of credit. But they were getting to a point where this was becoming real, and they needed content. And so one of the gentlemen who I knew just knew I was interested in conversation and thought that maybe a talk show or an interview show might be a piece of their puzzle. Predominantly there's a focus towards news, community issues, and a lot of music and those programs that speak to this particular audience. But they wanted that little piece perhaps that added to the completeness of the show,
right.
Or the station. And so that was, I was fortunate enough to be there early, so they were keen of the content. And so I was able to offer something that they wanted, and I was first there with that idea. So, and that's how I started. And I began broadcasting in January, and the show is also a podcast too.
Okay.
So it can be accessed live on the air. It can be streamed on air too, but then afterwards you can still listen with the podcast.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing too. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's really, it is really needed on radio, especially locally, because I think other than NPR, and that's not like our area, so it's not really any shows I could think of that talk about what's going on in the community and like our challenges and, you know, that add to our culture and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that you do that. I do appreciate that, because I've tuned in a few times. Like, you know, I work nights now, so it's like I'm asleep a lot of time during the day. But when I'm driving around, that's the radio station that I listen to. So
is that part of what motivated you with this show? Because you said earlier to me that you'd been doing this for maybe a year or so.
Right.
And obviously there's a lot of conversation, a lot of local people that you're conversing with.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if some of this overlaps with your motivations and what other motivations you have for this show.
Yeah, well, we wanted to show a different side of the community and to show a positive side, a positive thing. People who might not get the light shines on them, so to speak, but they're definitely doing the work and, you know, kind of go, you know, no one ever says, hey, this person's so great. Like, you know, they've had a barbershop for 20 years. Like, you know, no one. So it's like to highlight that and to show, you know, to reclaim the narrative, you know, so to speak. And it was just like me and my brother who runs the cameraman, Mike. What's going on, man? You know, we were sitting around, and it's a good story. I'll tell you a story too. Okay, we had like an older phone that stopped working, but it still recorded. We had a newer phone. So we would set them up and just talk about whatever. Like we'd watch CNN, and it was, oh man, this story, you know, it's so blown up. It's this, like whatever we thought. Oh, we watched Bill Maher. Oh man, I don't know, I don't like that point. You know, and I was like, man, this is a show. And it was like, we kept saying that for a couple weeks. I was like, how do you get a show? Well, let's get a show. Like, you know, it's the internet age. So then now here we are.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the democratization of information, media and information.
Yeah, I love
and
it.
this is part of it.
Right, it is, and I love it. That's how it should be. That's why I love the internet. I absolutely love the internet. Because I remember when I was younger and I wanted to know something, I would have to go to the library, which I love that too, you know, but you gotta look and search, and it's like, oh, somebody checked the book out, they never brought it back, like, oh, that sucks. But now it's like so much information, like just right there.
So how do you balance then the two elements that we're talking about that bring us joy in our lives? So there's the internet, which is a phenomenal piece of technology. It's a phenomenal component to how people live their lives. But the flip side to that is we're trying to be very human with each other as well, outside of technology, you know, beyond the equipment around us and the microphones and the cameras and the lights and that sort of thing, and how people are watching this. You and I are physically engaged in a conversation, and that's what you're about.
Right.
So we're having to balance these two things together.
I just treat everything equally, you know? Like I'm aware when I'm doing too much of one or the other, so I kind of just tone it down. It took a while for me to get that. Like once I start feeling like frustrated, like either way, then it's like, okay, hold on, you know, time out. Like reevaluate, like what am I doing right now? Like, so it's a challenge at first, but You know, I don't know. This is how I approach everything, though, with equality. You know, like I'm going to treat you fairly, and it just works out that way.
Right.
You know.
How do you remember the first time you came across the internet?
The first time, yeah, I do. I absolutely remember the first time, and it was like not a pleasant experience for me because someone told me about it, and it was like, you know, it was like a hip hop website. You know, I'm like, a hip hop web. They telling me about it, like, oh, the internet is gonna be this and that. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It was like dial-up days, you know. So they're like, okay, I'm gonna go to this. You'll like this. And he pulls up the web page, and it's like, it makes the noise. my younger family, they might not understand, you know, like they don't remember those days. And it's like, okay, half the web page loaded up. 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh, okay. He comes up like, oh yeah, this is great. Okay, click on that story. I'm like, everybody outside, like, oh yeah, this internet's great. I'm out of here. You know, it wasn't until like years later that I actually.
Yeah.
What about you? Because you got a little different perspective. So how did you first take it in?
Yeah. So it was 1997 or 8, give or take, somewhere in there, and I was one of the first people in the company I was working at to get internet. Several other people had it, but it was a big firm. And I thought, why am I the only person in my department? Or rather, why can't I be the only person in my department that has this? There are other people around. So I asked to be a pilot for it, and they said, oh, okay. And so I got the internet. And in many respects, it was really underwhelming to me then. But I had no idea. I had no vision. I couldn't understand what this was and what it could be. But it was just in a period of 3 years that it completely changed the dynamic of our working environment, how I felt about it, the capacity that I could see for it in the world, and that was just my narrow, myopic view of it. So that's what I remember. It was a little underwhelming at the beginning.
Yeah, and I remember I had a friend. His name is John. Shout out to you, John. I love you, brother. He used to tell me in high school, he said, yeah, man, what we could do is we go and we buy the web domains. We can go get Pepsi.com, we get Nike.com, and then when they come around where they built their website and they try to get their name, they got to pay us. And I'm like, McDonald's not going to pay us. Like, what are you talking about? And I remember, like, that was kind of the case. Like, they were, we'll give you $20,000 for that. And I was like, whoa, this dude was a genius. He works out in IT now in San Francisco. Right. So I should have stuck with him.
It gives me a small piece of comfort to hear you say he's still working. Yeah. Because you're right. I think that, what do they call it? Name squatting or something like that. But you know, before, in the early days, that was a completely legitimate business. Why not? That was foresightful. Yeah. You wanted something that had value, someone else wanted it, you'd sell it to them. Wow.
I think he's changed the industry now. Like, he does like the coding and like a bunch of stuff. So like, I had technical problems when we first did our website. He was like, that's so easy. Like, what? Like, it's like, just send me the file. I'll take care of it. Like, okay, thanks. You know.
Do you think now that here we are 20, 30 years on and the internet is huge, globally facilitating engagement device for millions of people across the planet, do you think it is a tool that you use or it can be used to create the kind of engagement that you want to see in the world?
Yeah, definitely. Because it connects you to like-minded people that's not necessarily, in your community. Because it's like, if you have an idea, you could be the only person here with this idea, and it's like everybody around you, all your peers are like, oh, you're crazy. And you go online, and somebody else is like, that's brilliant. Like, I love it. Like, let's do it. So it's like, or just having, sharing, like, you might be the only friend you have into anime. So you get into an anime group, and now it's like you have some kind of outlet. It could be negative too, but take the good with the bad.
It's tough, isn't it? Because we're living in a moment where you see, for example, the Arab Spring, and to some degree there's some credit given to Twitter and other social media platforms that helped engage those people in those protests. And you see other examples of that. And then there's also the situation of Russian hacking into systems and fake news. And then this bubble effect where people only get their news from that tribe that you're talking about,
Right.
whether it's Breitbart or if it's some other alternative, less reputable service. But we can't tell what is legitimate and what isn't legitimate.
Yeah, that's the challenging part. You like really have to research.
Right.
And I'm afraid like a lot of people don't, because it's like you're kind of hearing what you want to hear. So, I think that's a big thing too. That's leading to the kind of the divide that we have right now. It's because it's like if I want to think only negative thoughts about the president, I can find a space that supports that 100%.
Right.
It says, oh, this person did this, he did that, he kicked a kitten, like, there's nothing weird at all. It's like, I miss that, like the balance of, hey, this is just the facts. Like, I don't know, so.
And I don't mind opinion. I don't mind people having
Right.
an opinion about facts. It's just a condensation of just fact chosen out of context that gives us no insight into what's happening.
Right. I definitely agree with you there. I definitely agree with you. Hopefully, though, you have no choice but to come to a head and just get back to the simple thing, like we said, just conversating with someone that maybe doesn't agree with you. I think that sometimes that's the best way to grow. Is to say, hey, okay, you see it this way, I see it that way. Like, I never saw your point of view. To me, that's like the difference, because it's like at the root of like racism and prejudice, it's just different cultures. So it's like, I might not understand why you do what you do. You don't understand what I do. So if we just talk about it, if you're willing, it can, take that divide away.
Right.
So
there's I think he's a French professor, but I think he teaches in Oxford, but his name is Theodore Zeldin. And to paraphrase him, I borrow his definition of conversation. And he talks about it being when two people are willing to come together and share thoughts, feelings, opinions, experiences, observations, and so they willingly share those. And then they are also willing to leave that engagement slightly different. And I love that idea about willingness, and you use that word willingness. You have to be willing to come, willing to share, but also willing to be changed by this and to leave different. And we're not talking necessarily about like a eureka moment or some epiphany where it's life-changing, but just enough even where maybe you think thyme is the best thing in lasagna, but you're trying to persuade me it's actually oregano.
Right.
And maybe I don't agree with you, but I'm willing to. It can be small things.
Right.
But you just have to be willing.
Yes, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm gonna have to leave it there. We've come to the end of our time. Would you like? Yeah, it goes fast. It goes real fast. Would you like to let people know where they can reach you, or just say anything, or this will be your time?
Talk. Everybody should talk with each other, and if they want some further information about me or the art of conversation, squishtalks.com. Best place to go to find me.
Right, definitely. Well, I appreciate you coming in again.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. All right, family. There we go. It's been another great episode. If you would like to add on to the conversation, you can reach us at thevoicesofreasonshow.com, and we can keep it going. Let's conversate. Peace.